Hello, welcome to a Purple Insider Extra from US Bank Stadium. Matthew Coller, Sam Ekstrom here. The Vikings win 30-17, a terrific offensive performance by the Vikings, and they shut down the Seattle Seahawks in the second half. Let me start us out by asking you this question, Sam. How big was this Vikings win over the Seattle Seahawks?
I think it is bigger than your average win. It's not everything. It is one win out of 10 or 11 you're probably going to need, but it prevents utter disaster. I mean, 0-3, you're talking about people's jobs. You're talking about, trying to string together 3-3 at the bye, and nobody's happy. Everybody's surly. And even us, we probably would have been a little surly with an 0-3 start because it's just harder to write about. So I think this saved a lot of people's mindset. It gets them back on the right track, and I think gives them a very clear mental reset at 2-2. Get one more win against a really good team. You're feeling good at 2-2, which has been a launching point for all of Zimmer's good teams. They've all been 2-2 after 4 games. So it gets them back on the right track. They prove that they can beat anybody in this building. Still questions to answer, but I mean, the offense is the story with the way Kirk Cousins has now played through 3 games.
Now, Mike Zimmer called it the best offensive performance he's seen in his 8 years here. I think we could do a whole nother video comparing some of the other good games that they've had, especially in this building, but no doubt about it, the Vikings moved the ball every single time they had it almost, and when they were given a chance, when Seattle cracked the door open by committing a boneheaded penalty on 3rd down, the Vikings blew the doors open and never looked back. How much of this do you think is sustainable as we go forward? Because we saw them get everyone involved. A big game for Justin Jefferson, Tyler Conklin, Alexander Mattison was great on the ground. Cousins was protected well by the offensive line, which has been, of course, much maligned over the last few years. One of the better performances today by them. How much can carry over as we go forward? Or what are the things specifically that they did today that they could do next week against Cleveland and beyond?
Well, it's not going to be that good. I mean, that was unsustainably good. The way they converted on 3rd downs, they're not going to go 9 of 13 every week. Only 1 sack each of the last 2 weeks. I think the offensive line has done a great job. They've also been facing some weaker interiors on the defensive line, and that's probably not going to happen every week. So how are they going to respond when things don't go as well on 1st and 2nd down, when they get hit in the mouth a little bit? Because it has been a hot knife through butter for most of the last 2 weeks. I think that just the multiple looks can be sustainable. The way that they're using different, of having a 3rd wide receiver helps a lot because the workload is not all on Dalvin, or in this case, Alexander Mattison. It's not all on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. They're getting a tight end involved more in the passing game, which Kyle Rudolph was not offering them much last year. They're getting a 3rd receiver involved in the passing game. That wasn't happening much last year. So I think those things just make the offense more unpredictable. They have more weapons, and therefore they're going to be more efficient. And through 3 games, I think we're seeing just maybe a little more mature of an offense from the younger Kubiak than his dad was producing last year.
No, I agree. I think it's got a more modern touch to it than it has in the past. Now, here's a question, though, based on Alexander Mattison playing in for Dalvin Cook. Now, we know that Mike Zimmer loves to run Dalvin Cook under all circumstances, even if the efficiency is questionable at times. Alexander Mattison today did a great job of running the football, had a few big plays for the screens, but it seemed that they knew that they were going to have to rely more and lean more into Kirk Cousins in the passing game. Is that something that you expect them to look at and say, well, we actually trusted Kirk Cousins in a lot of big spots in this game, and it paid off to throw the football much more often?
I don't know yet. Game 1 against Cincinnati, very, very, very heavy Dalvin. Game 2 against the Cardinals, very heavy Dalvin, and rightfully so, because he was pounding the Cardinals in that game, 8 yards a carry for a while. Today, 26 carries for Mattison, so he's still got a very healthy workload, and then 6 more in the screen game. So it was pretty well, not quite 50-50, but about 2/3, 1/3. They got the running game pretty well established. So I don't know if it's changing, Collar. I think this is still, and Mike Zimmer said this a couple weeks ago, this is still a run-first team, and I think that's going to maintain their identity, but maybe you give up trying to establish the run faster, and I think that too, it becomes more unpredictable whether you're going to run the ball. If you can mix it up a little bit on first down, pass the ball more early in sequences. Don't always, run it on 2nd and 10. I think there are things they can do to give this offense more balance, but I still think that Dalvin Cook and or Alexander Mattison is going to be the fulcrum.
Right, and I don't think they're going to go entirely away from the run game and start throwing it 50 times a game, but their aggression did pay off in multiple occasions today, including at the end of the half, where the game really changed. The Vikings go down, they score a touchdown, they get the ball back, they take up almost the entire third quarter. It resulted in a field goal, but it still had the same effect of keeping Russell Wilson off the field. Same in the first half of the game, we were thinking Russell Wilson might put up 50 against this Vikings defense. What do you think happened in the second half for the defense that they fixed from the first half? And again, I think sustainability is key here. This is your first win of the season, so what can they do going forward that they did in the second half today?
Well, it helped tremendously to play with the lead, so that's one thing. I mean, Seattle, I think, had 19 second-half plays. That's nothing. I mean, that's insane, and a good job on the Vikings defense to adjust and hold them scoreless for 41 minutes of this game. So what did they do differently? We're going to have to watch the tape back to know for sure, but I think the secondary was a lot more disciplined. I felt like for all Bashaud Breeland has struggled with in this game, in this season, and I think he's got to rectify some stuff, I thought he played a lot better in the second half. Eric Kendricks seemed to get more involved, but again, I'm not convinced their problems are solved. I think Seattle also missed some plays. I mean, they had a third down that was dropped, or it was a poor throw, but off the hands of Freddie Swain. They had a bomb to the end zone that was ever so slightly underthrown that could have been a touchdown at the end. So they caught a couple breaks there where Seattle just looked a little flummoxed, kind of trying to play down by two possessions. Vikings were more liberated to bring pressure. I think that first half is a more important lesson that you need to fix some things. The second half was really good, yes, but you can't spot a team 17 points and 200 yards. I mean, that's pretty unacceptable.
Right. The run defense, especially early in the game, was pretty much non-existent. They were getting gashed consistently, and that's where the offensive performance, I think, offense impacts defense, and we saw it here today because Seattle couldn't run the ball by the time they got it in the second half because they were down in the game. That made a big impact. So now as they win this one, where do you think everything stands for pressure, tension, what it means for the schedule going forward? Because I think one of those big swings is if you lose this game and go to 0-3, then the discussion is 0-4 might be the end of some people's tenures here. We've seen that before in Atlanta. We've seen it in Houston last year, that tends to be what happens if you go 0-4. But now that you're 1-2, it seems like it opens up the path more for another big win at home next week. And then you have Detroit, then you have Carolina. Like all of a sudden, everything looks a little bit sunnier now that it's 1-2 as opposed to 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, if you get to 2-2, you can get to 4-2 because Detroit and Carolina are going to be very winnable. Now I know Carolina is going to be above 500 at that point, which we did not expect, and Detroit, despite being winless, has been pluckier than expected. But you got to beat Detroit at home if you're going to be legit. So I think that getting to 2-2, weirdly enough, Coller, you think about the previous 2-2 teams like 2017. They lose to Detroit to drop to 2-2. Dalvin tears his ACL, like bad vibes there. Mm-hmm. 2019, Diggs is upset. You lose to Chicago. You're 2-2. This team could actually have more momentum at 2-2 than those teams did. So it's a complete reset on the season. It's a longer season. You've got 17 games and a division that isn't very convincing right now. Even if Green Bay, as we film this, a chance to go to 2-1. So there's a lot at stake next week for the Vikings, I think, to feel at least kind of internally that they are right in the mix.
Right. 2-2 would mean reset button on the season and every opportunity to have the season that they planned out and talked about in training camp and how good this team was, but 1-3 brings up those conversations again. So a very impressive win for the Vikings today to beat a good Seattle team that also has high expectations, but a lot more work to do until they can get to a point where we're saying, hey, look at this team and what they're doing. And like you laid out, the first quarter of the season doesn't always tell us how it's going to go. So listen to our longer post-game podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, just type in Purple Insider and our reactions at purpleinsider.substack.com, and we will catch you later.